Welcome to another episode of Moving Forward Talk with Diana. This platform is open to discuss various topics, sharing one's own experience. Although circumstances impact us differently, others could learn and apply tools that are shared as motivation to not allow barriers to win. With me tonight on this episode, we have Miss Tanya. Miss Tanya, I will not try to pronounce your last name. I will leave that up to you. Miss Tanya will be sharing her life experience of life after divorce. Welcome, Miss Tanya. It's a pleasure to have you participating on Moving Forward Talk with Diana.
Hi, Dr. Clark. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. Before we get into your story of life after divorce, give us a little bit of background of yourself.
Well, good evening, everyone, or good morning, or good afternoon, depending on when you watch the video. My name is Tanya Kwete, and I serve as community representative for the Healthy Start Coalition of Hardy, Highlands, and Polk. And our coalition focuses on the family from the pregnancy up until the child is 3 years of age and teenagers ages 10 to 19. And of course, the dads and the grandparents. I am originally from Valdosta, Georgia, and I relocated to Polk County, Florida 10 years ago this August. And it has been a joy to live in Central Florida. And through my work in the community, serving Hardy, Highlands, and Polk County, I was able to meet Dr. Diana Clark and have just grown a fond relationship and friendship with her, both working and personally. And she's just a joy to be around. So I'm excited to be here today and to speak with you all about life after divorce per Tanya Kwete's story.
Awesome. Now I'm going to open the platform to you, and I will listen and hope to learn from you.
Okay, Dr. Clark. So once again, hello, everyone. I got married January the 3rd, 2013. Wow, time is flying. January the 4th, 2013. And in this, I traveled to West Africa, Ghana, and was meeting family and visiting. And I was touring and volunteering at a local community school. And at this school, I met a beautiful young man that took my breath away, not only physically, but more so intellectually. I had never met a peer that I could speak with so well and just leave the conversation that much more enhanced, that much more motivated. And so in meeting him in 2011, we had an international relationship, and in the process, eventually got married in Accra, Ghana, with the blessings of my mom and dad and his parents. And so on my way back, lo and behold, I was pregnant. And babies are wealth. Children are wealth in most countries except for the United States, from my perspective, from my understanding. You can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have a child, you're kind of looking at as poor as it pertains to wealth. And so I got back, found out I was pregnant. I was excited. I was 29 years old. I had graduated from graduate school with my master's in public health. I didn't have any other children. I was married. So I felt like, the picket fence was coming. And
the American dream life, right?
Yes, that American dream, the white picket fence with the husband and the 2 dogs and the 2 kids, So fast forwarded, he had never been to the United States, and we had to go through the process of immigration. And as you all are aware, immigration can be tough. And if you aren't aware, it is hell on high waters if you're not strong enough to handle it. But I am a conqueror. And so I decided I was not paying for an attorney. I would study my butt off and figure out how to do the process. And so in that, I was able to complete the process, which is 3 stages. Stage 1 is the initial filing. Stage 2 is acceptance of the filing. And then you have to do the medical clearance. And stage 3 is the interview to clear to come. And we had married over there. So he was coming here as my spouse, as a permanent green card holder that would be naturalized as a naturalized citizen after 2 to 3 years. So I hadn't seen him since January the 22nd, 2013. And by the time we finished and completed all of our immigration paperwork, he arrived on the plane May of 2014. Our son was born September of 2013. And so for those first 10 months of my son's life, it was just him and I battling this parenting thing together. And of course, him, my ex-husband, and I would do videos and calls and WhatsApp to, keep him connected to the son. But, life happens. So when he got here, didn't know anything about the adjustment, didn't know anything about the assimilation. And it was cool to an extent. It was nice. He didn't have any family, so he was a first-generation immigrant or migrant, or however you want to phrase it. And it just was cool. But long story short, we divorced.
And at this point, I guess I would ask, how did you feel being I don't want to use the word breadwinner, but it is most appropriate to use. How did you feel being the breadwinner? Because he just migrated here and wasn't at the time, I know the process. You migrated here, and then you do have to wait until your documents arrive and before you can apply for a job. And even coming here, probably not speaking enough English, that's another barrier. How was that? How was that experience for both you and him?
So our biggest barrier, honestly, was obtaining the driver's license. He had no issue with getting a job. He was here like the first week of May, and within 2 weeks he had his green card, so he was legally able to work. One of his first jobs, he was making $18 an hour at one of the local factories that makes bedding. And I think the hardest part was understanding the transition for myself. I was scared because I let the enemy creep in, speaking about, just wanted a green card, he's not loving you, et cetera, all of the disclaimers that can attack you when you marry someone that may not be in the same nationality as yourself. He spoke English because Ghana is a British colony, so that was his main language. He was very articulate. As I said, that's what attracted me to him. Like, the looks stopped me, but the conversation kept me. The looks stopped me, but the conversation kept me. And so just to keep him encouraged, the job was not a challenge. It took him a few times to able to obtain the driver's license was the hardest part. So I would have to navigate my schedule to make sure that when he had an interview, that he was there in a timely fashion and understood the process. One thing about the job thing is the vision of what America is, have a lot of, from my experience in my marriage, the preconception that all jobs are the blue collar jobs, like doctors, lawyers, working in offices. And most of us that work in those type of settings, we've had to work our way into those settings. You don't just come to this country if you don't have that skill set, that degree, that certification. And even yet still, when you do have it, America is the day want you to take another certification and another test,
right,
to prove that you're worthy to work here in our country and to progress your studies that you've already accomplished. So we got divorced. It was great. I enjoyed the courting. I enjoyed being married to him. And I went through a phase because we had the type of marriage that people poured into, because I lit up a room when I talked about our situation. I lit up a room when I just shared who we were and how we met so magically in the elementary school over there. He was a teacher, and so people would pour into our relationships through our marriage. I mean, through in our marriage, through prayer, through money, because the process of immigration is costly, upwards 10,000 plus, and the documentation is insane because they want to make sure that only quality, quote, people are able to come. And most of, if you're from a brown or a black country, the likelihood of you getting it to be able to immigrate is very slim. So unfortunately, we were only able to live as a married couple together for a year.
So what happened after a year?
After a year, I succumbed to the enemy's voice.
Outside influences?
Yes, I started to believe that he was going to leave us for a woman back home in Ghana and bring her here. And it was more so because he was just on the phone. But now, hindsight, it's been 5 years after the divorce, I realized he was just homesick.
Right.
And he was here for us, even though sometimes mentally it didn't seem as though he was. So yeah, so it was just all those like, oh, he's gonna leave you high and dry, give you, you know, just. And so when he left, I had introduced him to some friends locally and from his country, and they, you know, hung out. We all were cool. But after we got into a huge disagreement, because I just felt like the connection was not there anymore. Like the magical luster had just went away. And so his friend came and picked him up. I begged him not to leave. I begged him to come back. And his friend was like, oh no, he has to establish himself. And, you know, he has to get on his feet and et cetera, et cetera. So I just said, okay. I put my foot down 3 weeks after he had left and said, okay, you know, you can't wallow in this. Mm-hmm. And in this wallowing, like, grieve, be sad, but what are you going to do next? And honestly, I can sincerely say I had a life after the divorce, but I didn't let him out of my heart until last year. So I can give you the process that helped me get to the point where we can actually now co-parent our 6-year-old son, where we can now get to the point talking about his mom and family over there, and me possibly taking our son to visit his extended amount of family over there. So some of the things that I focused on after the divorce was self. Mm-hmm. Like, what got you here? I've been in relationships before, but I've never been where I'm back in Florida and I have a man 11-hour flight away, and I'm telling guys here, oh, I got a boyfriend, and they're like, no, you don't. Every time I see you, you're single. I mean, you're by yourself. And I'm like, no, I have a boyfriend. And so guys would come after me, and I'm like, no. And so then all of a sudden, I'm having to really justify this new normal for myself with a almost 2-year-old child. And so I started journaling. I started reading books, books for self-growth, books about self-love, books about being courageous. And most importantly, I started to utilize my Christian foundation and my following of Christ foundation by using some scriptures in the Bible. And so when I went from self, and this is not in any particular order, God was the resounding person that kept my mind sane. Absolutely. Because those 3 weeks after he left, I was sitting outside of his apartment for many days. I had to send my son up to Georgia because I couldn't be a mom at that time. I was so like, why would he do this to us? I had this vision for our relationship. He was going to be an architect engineer, and I was going to be public health guru with a doctorate and all of these things. And whoosh, within a blink of an eye, the vision failed. The vision left. The image was gone. Something that I had established in my mind and my psyche for the last 4 years at this point, or 3 years, from 2011 to 2014. And so
at what point though, and I'm listening, so at what point did you finally say to yourself, I have to pick myself up. Now I have a son, so I do still have to mentally continue strong for my son. At what point did you say that to yourself?
To be sincere, when I did an illegal activity and didn't get caught. The consequences of that possible activity of being arrested shook me into reality. I've never been arrested. I don't have a criminal background. And sharing that situation with my mom and with one of my best friends humbled me, because I was out of body, out of mind. And once again, leaning onto my faith. And I used 5 scriptures to have pretty much set the precedent of my life, that has set my course since that day. Because once again, the vision was gone. And I'm a young lady with a almost 2-year-old son, lots of degrees. I was able to bring him over here on my little salary by myself with no co-sponsor. That's another thing with immigration. And so I was on top of the world. So those 5 scriptures I wanted to share with you all today.
Right.
And I'm going to Tanya phrase them. I'm not going to read them verbatim, but I'll give you the gist of what they're about. So the first one is Habakkuk 2, chapter 2, verse 2. And in it, it says, write your vision down and make it plain and clear. So I had to start writing down what I wanted to see for myself, what I wanted to see for my son, how I was going to be able to make sure that I pushed through this process. The second one was Proverbs 27 and 17, Proverbs, the 27th chapter and the 17th verse. This scripture talks about iron sharpening iron. So I decided to put myself around like-minded individuals that were going to help me to achieve my goals, but also encourage me to be the best version of myself again. Because once again, that vision had left. The image was gone. And also in that, I decided to seek counseling. And I am a firm believer in mental health counseling. I just want to put a shameless plug. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So don't forget to thank a therapist. And I just put yourself around strong people that understand where you're at, won't judge you for where you're at, and that will help you get to the level that you wrote down based on Habakkuk 2 and 2. My third verse that helped me get to this point, life after a divorce, is Psalms 37 and 4. And in this Psalms, the 37th chapter and the 4th verse says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will grant thee the desires of your heart. So in that, I knew I wanted to have a strong son. I knew I wanted to get my career off the road. Because I was newly into it. I knew I wanted to be happy again. And happy is an emotion that sometimes get overplayed. So I wanted joy, that sense of, I understand what I've been through, but I'm not going to let it stop me from where I'm going. And then, so the next verse, because this, I don't know if it's the 7 stages, Dr. Clark, of grief, or the 8 stages of grief, but it's like a cycle. So now we're midsummer of, let's say he left in May, we're like August, September, and he done met a new girl, and we're still married, and people telling me they seeing him living his best life, and I'm around here being a single parent.
And I know that even though you are depending on your scriptures, to which nothing but the scriptures, nothing but our faith in God can actually take us through some of our path that we have found ourselves in. And sometimes not that we have found ourselves in it, but the path that life has taken us through. But even at that point, you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people. You're pushing yourself to get back to Tanya. And he's with someone else now. And I'm sure your mind may have wondered, or you may have thought, I have done all this to get him here, and this is what happened, and this is what's going on. How did that make you feel all over again?
Pain, anger, and I wanted him to feel my wrath. And so I was scared from the situation I did previous that didn't get it, caught for. So I knew I couldn't go that extreme. But one thing about the practicality of life after divorce, and if you're a believer, God will protect you from yourself.
Right.
And he put a veil over me. Like I said, my ex-husband was all open, not in a negative way, but he wasn't like hiding in a house or an apartment like I was being a mom or a dad. He was out. And I never had the opportunity to have to cross paths with him ever until we went to court for the divorce. We never crossed paths at the grocery store. We never crossed paths at the mall. And I think that is a blessing, because honestly, from a humanistic standpoint, who knows what I would have done when anger and wrath showed up and I was boiling over it. Because one thing oftentimes that I'm learning is once you replace or try to replace, you kind of have slightly moved on. Right. It's an old saying, and I don't believe in it, but people will say the best way to get over someone is to get under another person. And that's not for me, but have you heard it, Dr. Clark?
I've heard it several times, and I have said not at all, because that just creates more heartache.
Exactly. But if you don't know any better and you're just processing through anger and wrath and you're seeing or hearing, because remember, I didn't see it, it's like, excuse me? So, which leads really into the next verse of the Bible that has carried me to life after divorce. We just celebrated 5 years after the divorce, not 5 years post-marriage, but 5 years since he walked out, which is Exodus 14:14. And in this scripture, it is so amazing. I encourage you to tattoo it on you, as my pastor would say. It pretty much says, be still and I will fight for you. Be still. And so in my stillness, remember, now I'm journaling, now I'm seeing a therapist, now I'm hanging out with my friends of like-mindedness. And in my stillness, I decided to say, what am I steps I'm going to set for myself to get to that next level. So I wanted my son to go to the best kindergarten. the VEST BPK program. So now I'm sending out emails and making phone calls and community referrals, talking to the people that know the information and saying, what schools do you recommend? So in BPK at 4 years old, he's now, learning Spanish and doing things. So that was one of the things that I decided to be still, and while God is dealing with all the other stuff, let me focus on my son. Let me focus back on myself. I wanted to make sure that he understood some daily affirmations. So I started teaching him, I am kind, I am strong, I am handsome, I am athletic, I love God, I love God's people, I love myself. Because some people can love God and love God's people and not love themselves.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure I covered all aspects with him in that aspect. And another affirmation, I'm humble, I'm kind, I know that I am loved. And so just continuously pouring into him, building him up, because he's not only my only child, he is my mom's only grandchild. So he had been waited on for a long time. And it's me and my sister, and my sister's in her 40s, and I'm in my mid 30s. And my mom is in her mid 60s, and my son is now 6. So she had waited for a long time on this baby. And then with myself and work, I had only been at my job 3 years. And in those 3 years, I was more focused on getting my husband here, or ex-husband here. So, and I didn't know anything about babies. I was a college student, fresh out of grad school, traveled the world, explored, dreamed, discovered, doing that, living my best life. So I thought, before child and before husband. Mm-hmm. And 3 things that resonated with me: the Black maternal and infant mortality rates, because our Black babies and Black women are dying in pregnancy-related situations, and our Black babies are dying. And then safe sleep. Our babies should always be slept alone on their back in their crib, and we call that the ABCs. And so I perfected my speaking points, I did more research, and now I'm able to share trainings and conversations immediately about these 2 things that have pushed my career into almost 9.5 years at my organization. And then the last 2, I'm gonna combine them together. Psalms 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God has always provided for me, things that I didn't even think of. I met a gentleman 4 years after my ex-husband left, and we became really close, and he poured into me and told me things I hadn't even visioned for myself, such as buying a house. So life after divorce, I have bought a house, a 1,700 square foot house on almost a half an acre of land that I own by myself, that I pay all the bills by myself. And I'm thankful to God that I'm able to do that. I have a car that is paid off, even though it has 234,000 miles on it and it's only 7 years old, but hey, it's mine.
It's paid off.
Yes, I have paid off all of my student loan. My debt to income ratio is very low. And my overall debt, despite remembering me having to start the process for immigration, which was a lot of my debt in the beginning, I am still roughly at less than $12,000 total debt. So the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Mm-hmm. And last and certainly not least, I was under the fearful impression that negative things can happen. He eventually married the young lady, and some, gossip again was that Black magic can occur and things of that nature. And so this final scripture kind of gave me even more peace and more clarity. And it's Psalms 91, where it pretty much just paraphrases that God has you. He has you, he has me, and my son, he has. And so life after divorce now, we co-parent. I love dropping him off. We just went the other day and he got a haircut with him. I love that quality time reading a book. I love the quality time of going dancing. I am a person that loves the interaction with the nightlife whenever I can get the opportunity to. And I love traveling. I haven't been out the country in 4 years. The last time I went to Dubai. And so I'm overdue for an out of the country international trip after COVID-19. So we're looking at like end of 2021.
Count me in.
And yes, we're going to go together. And so life after divorce for me has been powerfully awakening for me. I have become, I think, I hope and pray, a better mom. Mm-hmm. I have become a better friend. I have definitely become a better colleague and worker. And I anticipate future things, running for school board, eventually city commission, and bring in some other women that may have experienced divorce. Because one thing as a Christian and Christ follower, divorce is shunned upon, and there's some grief and there's some shamefulness to it. And I went through that, but I didn't let it define me. So now when people, because they don't know if you're divorced, they just know they don't see that person anymore. I just wish him well. And the anger and bitter that they still carry, I point them to one of those scriptures. And I tell them, I'm okay. 5 years ago, maybe not. But today, May the 13th, 2020 at 9:50, I'm good. My son is good. And we are about to go to first grade next year. He's a straight A student. And he has a relationship with his father, which I didn't think would ever happen because wrath and anger was still there for quite a while. But now it's just love and understanding and a whole lot of peace.
And one thing I do have to add, and listening to you, I can concur that you have forgiven him.
Yes. And it's been a long step.
It's been a long step. But I believe that is the most important thing, that is the most powerful thing that you could do, is forgive him. Because, when we forgive others, then we set ourselves free.
Yes. Yes. The chains are broken. Mm-hmm. No more bondage. I feel sexier than I have ever felt in a long time. And I think it's because I forgave. And it's just a peace that I can't describe. It's a kind, gentle touch that just makes you get to the other side. And like I said, you're going to go through those 7 stages or 8. I can't remember, of grief or bereavement.
I think it's 7. I'm not sure.
Divorce is a separation.
Mm-hmm.
Divorce causes those elements to happen, but it's how you handle them. Right. And this is just my story, because who knew?
Nobody knows. Impact everybody differently. Now, exactly. Moving forward talks, I do have to ask, after your divorce, and a lot of us, must I say me, a lot of us, after a divorce, it's kind of hard to trust again. It's kind of hard to put yourself back into a relationship. It's hard to get married again. It's kind of hard to get married again. Do you see yourself getting married again?
I see myself going back to that scripture, delight myself in God, and he will give me the desires of my heart. Right now, marriage is not a desire, but as a woman of faith, as a woman of courage, mm-hmm. as a woman who loves physical touch because it's one of her love languages, I feel convicted to be in a covenant relationship with a man under the eyes of God. So I could tell you, no, I want to get married. And then you call me in 5 months. I'm like, girl, we had a backyard wedding and he's amazing and I'm pregnant. So my fleshly self will say no. Focusing on God, focusing on self, focusing on son. But my spiritual self says, yeah, I'm ready to cook for somebody and maybe wash their clothes and, get some of that quality time and physical touch, because those are my 2 top love languages.
Well, it was great. Thank you so very much for sharing. And then I'm going to leave a scripture with you. And that is my daily instructional scripture that I apply to myself. And that is Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. It was a pleasure to have you, and good luck. And God will keep trusting God. Keep trusting God, and he will give you the desire of your heart.
Life after divorce is not bad.
Not bad.